Hey, how's it going? I'm Derek Kirk of Effectatron. Hey, down here in the corner. Hey, face cam today. But basically we're going to create this conveyor belt here that you see here. It's just going to be a nice little loop where it's going to be these working conveyor belts with these little parts that inside that rotate correctly. Our cubes is going to fall off and stick to our conveyor belt and move along and be able to be pulled along by our conveyor belt. And it's just a really cool, fun little scene. And we're going to build it out from scratch. We're going to create every single part of this. We're going to do some modeling. We're going to do some dynamics. We're going to do some lighting. And it's just some tips and things on how to do this cool isometric view. So at the end of it, you get, this scene where it looks really nice, little clean, cartoony sort of. It's just a very good look. And these colors that I'm using, these materials are available for download. These are from my collection of trending color palette matte materials, and some of them just have a little bit of reflection added back into them with a little less roughness. So that's how you get this sheen. So we'll cover all that as well as a lot more in this tutorial. It's going to be a really fun one. And I thought I was just going to do the little conveyor belt, but I ended up just wanting to build the entire scene out. So thank you guys have been talking to me in the community and stuff and in the Discord, which I want to mention for sure. Join the Discord below if you just want to hang out with other artists and stuff like yourselves. It's been kind of just amazing for me personally, doing 3D and stuff, especially from home and in a town that's not like a huge business, and I had never worked in a huge production company. I don't really have any friends that do what I do, and I don't really have anybody to talk to about 3D. I can't just be like, oh hey, the NURBS or whatever. Nobody uses NURBS anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. No one would even know what I'm talking about if I said NURBS. But basically, it can be lonely and difficult to learn a overwhelming new skill. So whether this is your first time here today on my channel, welcome, thank you very much. Or if you've been here from the beginning, just thank you for being part of the community. And I'm really trying to build that community, and you guys are helping out so much. I've had people, encourage me to start this Discord. And since this Discord has started like less than a month ago, we've got over like 50 people in there now. And they're all amazingly talented artists. Some are just getting started. Some have been doing it for a long time. And it's just really cool to just help people and just like see people and talk to people and hear their journey and what they want to learn and how they can do it. And it's just, I remember starting out, and I remember now I've been doing this for years, and it's still tough to just be, just to do it. You have to have a lot of self-discipline because it can be really lonely and difficult to do this kind of stuff. And honestly, you see stuff, it's just like a lot of stuff with social media and stuff, and I don't want to go on a huge tangent here, but basically you see all these amazing work like Maxon puts out their demo reel and stuff. You're like, oh, I'll never be that good, or hopefully one day I'll be that good, or one day I'll do this. And honestly, whatever skill level you're at, you're doing great. And this is something I struggle with a lot. I think I'm not good enough and I need to get better, and one day I'll get better, and once I learn to do this, then I'll have made it. Or once I have this many followers, I'll have made it, or this or that. And honestly, it's just this huge struggle, and I want to be totally honest with you guys, and I struggle with it a lot. I'm going on a long rant. I apologize. Thank you so much for watching, but I just want you to know that you're doing good. Some of you are skipping through this, and that's totally fine. If you're in a good place, good for you. And if you're struggling and you're learning and you need a little motivation, hopefully hearing somebody who I think, I know what I'm doing, and I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Like, you know what I mean? So it's okay to not know how to do some things, and I have to tell myself that, but sometimes you just have to tell yourself, it's okay. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to tell yourself like where you are with your skill level is good. It's good to strive to be better, but it's also good that you are where you're at, and that's okay. You can keep going forward, baby steps at a time, but just because you're not where you think you should be or where you want to be doesn't mean you're not succeeding and you're not good. And that is something that I really, really struggle with. And I'm sure I'm not alone out there, but just remember that you are good and just do one step at a time, and it's a long game, man. You're not gonna master this software overnight. Nobody masters this software. No but one person knows how to do everything in here perfectly all the time, because there's just so much. And even so, even if I did, would I really feel like I did enough? Because then I'd probably just be like, well, now what if I learned Houdini? You know, so just take it baby steps at a time. Enjoy the process. And I am preaching as much to myself as I am to you, because again, this is something I struggle with. So hopefully, let's just get back into this tutorial. But what I wanted to say all this for is because the Discord has just become a place where I can talk to other artists and really feel like I'm part of a community and get inspiration and get motivation and get just like validation that you're not alone and that you're working towards something, and that everybody, you know, other people know what you're talking about and they know how you feel, and everybody has a story, and it's okay. It's good. You can be you. You don't have to be your work. It's just a lot. So definitely think about joining that Discord link below. I know this was a super long rant, but I'm gonna leave it in the video. Sorry, skip over it if you don't want to see it. I'll put a chapter mark in there, I guess. But thank you guys so much. So let's get back into this tutorial and build this scene out and have some fun learning. Okay. So okay. Let's get into it. So firstly, to start off, we just need our floor plane here, because we're not going to worry about a background, because we're going to be using that kind of isometric view that's going to be looking like straight down from the corner. We don't have to worry about a background or anything like that. So we've got our floor here, and my color palette here is from my color palette, nice trending color palette collection that I've created that you can download. There's a link for that below. It's just a bunch of nice matte materials that I've got in my asset browser here that you can download as well. So let's just go ahead and get started. So to create a conveyor belt, firstly, we need to build the treads, little things that go around the conveyor belt. So let's go ahead and create a cube, and we'll just raise this up. Let's get down in here so we can see what we're doing. So for our cube here, we're going to set this to 75, 20, and 350. And obviously you can do whatever you want, but we just kind of want a sort of long, thin tread. And we're going to go ahead and fillet that and just leave those settings how they are. So this is kind of a nice little tread. So what we're going to do now is we need to build that path of that conveyor belt. So what we're going to do, rather than trying to, you know, copy and paste these out or clone these out or anything like that for right now, what we want to do is just create a spline. So we're going to go ahead and create the rectangle spline, raise that up a little bit here, and we're going to go ahead and change the width of that to 2000 and the height to about 180. So you see we have this nice rectangle here, and it does not look like, you know, a conveyor belt, obviously, until we enable rounding. So checking rounding here, we're starting to see we get these nice round corners, and we have a radius control here. And if we just slide this radius up, now we have these really nice soft corners, and this looks like a conveyor belt path. So now we need to use a cloner to put these along our spline here. Go ahead and have your cube selected and just hold Alt when you click the cloner, and that's going to go ahead and throw that cube in that cloner for you. And you can just select this cloner, and you can see it starts off by default creating a grid for us, but we don't want that. We want to use an object. So we're going to set that to object, and then we want our object to be our spline here. So we're going to go ahead and click and drag the spline and put it in there. And by default, we are just looking rough, but we can easily fix this and create this. And there's a couple ways you can fix this. I'll show you first. Just the easiest way to do it would be to go into the transform and just rotate things around until you get the right thing. So we'll rotate this around at 90 degrees in the H, and then at 90 degrees in the P. And so now we see we have just, these are on there the right way, but for whatever reason, they're only in the corners and they're not spread out evenly across our spline here. So how do we fix that? Well, it's actually because of the intermediate points inside of our spline. So go back into your spline, and under intermediate points, it defaults to adaptive, and we want it to default to uniform. So just selecting that, you see now we have our spline points spread out across, and you can see we've got a little roughness, a little jaggedness to this, and it's not going to be that big of a deal for this, but if you needed to for your spline, if you want to do something a little more detailed, you could come in here and up the numbers here, and that's going to smooth that out. This works just like subdivision. So let's go ahead and just say 24 just so those are really nice and smooth there. And you can see our items are spread out evenly across this, which is exactly what we want. So what we can do now is go back into our object tag of our cloner and then scroll down, and we have the option of a rail. If you want to learn how to use the rail system, let me know in the comments below and I'll do a tutorial on that. It's a really cool way to add a little extra control to the way things are orienting based on another spline. So basically you can tell it to target things or scale things accordingly. It's a pretty cool little system, but we don't need it for what we're creating today. So let's just go ahead and maximize this screen here. And what we can do is we have our distribution and we have it set to count. That's exactly what we want. We're just going to go ahead and scroll this up until we kind of fill in our space here. We don't want things to overlap, and this looks pretty good, but our corners are they're a little janky, they're a little tanky, which isn't exactly what we want for a conveyor belt. It needs to be a little smoother. Well, there's an option called smooth rotation here. Enable that, and that's going to smooth out that just a little bit for us. And so now that we can really get in there, and it's going to have a nice, clean look here. Okay, exactly what we want. Without it, it's a little rougher. It just kind of adds a little extra tilt there, if you can see that. And we can spread this out just a bit so we're not overlapping our pieces. 54. Yeah, cool. We'll turn smooth rotation on. There we go. All right, so now we have that created. All we need to do to make this thing go around is not rotate it or anything. It's just control the offset. So what we can do is keyframe right here at offset at 0%. And we'll go up to like 320 for our scene. And we'll go to the end and we're just going to go 100% and check that. So by default, it's going to start off slow and then start going. But you can see we have this perfect rotation of our conveyor belt. Obviously we don't want it to ramp up and then ramp back down because we just want our conveyor belt to constantly go. So all we need to do is go to the windows, go down to the timeline F curve, and we can go ahead and see here this window that opens up in the worst size possible. Click our cloner, hit H to frame all, and then we can click and drag these points, and we're going to say linear, this little straight line here. So now that's going to add a constant velocity from beginning to end. So we can just go ahead and hit play, and then it's going to be that constant speed throughout the whole time. So really nice thing to do there. I took my headphones off because I realized I had them on, and even though I'm not listening to anything at all, and so I thought since I'm on camera, I probably should just take those off. Comment below if you also work with headphones and you wear them all the time, regardless of whether you're actually listening to anything or not. I find that I do. So let's go ahead and add our cube here and just add a little extra geometry in here because we're going to be working with dynamics. So let's go ahead and just take our cube and we're just going to add some segments in here, 10, 10, and 10, just to segment that out. That's going to help our dynamics work better with the surface, and it's not that many polygons. It's going to overload and slow down our scene. So let's go ahead and create a cube. And we'll just drag this up above our scene, and we'll do the same thing with that cube. We'll say 10, 10, and 10, and we'll fill up the corners of that as well. So for our cloner here, we don't want to put it on the cloner. We want to put it on the cube, and we're just going to right click and go to bullet tags, and we're going to go collider body. And collider body, these used to be in the dynamics tag, and now they've called it bullet because they're bullet time dynamics, I guess. So we've got our collider body here. And honestly, automatic's totally fine. One thing we do want to change is we want to change the bounce of this. We don't want it to bounce at all. So we're going to go ahead and leave that at 0, set that down to 0, and leave our friction at 100 because we don't want things to slide across our belt. We want our belt to grab things and pull it. So now we can go to our cube here. This is going to be our falling cube, and we're going to right click, go to bullet tags, rigid body, this little bowling ball here. And instead of this, we're going to leave these settings how they are, and automatic is fine for that as well. So let's go ahead and just hit play, and pop, voila. You have a really nice, cool working conveyor belt that will drop your cube off into the void. There we go. So pretty neat. So now let's go ahead and get those things inside of here that are going to work correctly. So let's go ahead and create a tube. Grab this tube, pull it up, rotate it, hold shift to rotate that 90 degrees exactly. And we'll switch into our front view by middle mouse clicking. And we'll go ahead and just scale this so it fits inside of our cube here. We'll grab that outer radius, and we want to just bring it down a little bit, pull it up, and then we'll pull it back up. So we're going to go with touchy. 80 centimeters here. And you can set your middle radius to whatever you want. Let's go ahead and go back into our perspective view, and we'll just stretch this out. And we'll go back in the top view to make sure we're stretching it out about the width of our conveyor belt. And this is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and add a few more segments in here. Let's say 64. And then we'll take the segments out of the middle here, just a few. We're just going to go down to 3 height segments. And the cap segments, we can fillet this to make that a little smoother. So what we want to do is we want to create a piece of polygon in here. Now you could just create a cube and shove it in here, but let's go ahead and do a tiny bit of modeling. So let's go ahead and take our tube, hit C, and we'll go into our polygon selection tool. And we're just going to click and hold shift. And then we're going to look down the other side and we're going to click and hold shift here. And we're going to hit delete. And then we're going to go into our edge tool here. Double click this edge and double click this edge. And we're going to say bridge. We're going to click and drag. And voila, it created really nice geometry. That bridge tool, they have made it so much better. It's fantastic now. Like normally you would have to do one piece and then the next piece and the next piece. Now you can do entire things and it'll close the gap for you. It's awesome. So there you go. In case that was fast, all I did was once you have these selected, you can double click and it will go ahead and select a whole loop for you. And then you hold shift, double click over here. And all I did was I clicked on the ledge so that it's highlighted and I drug it over and just connected it to the point. It was directly across from it. And that created that geometry. I know I did that a little quick because I was excited to show that off. So pretty cool. Now we can right click and go to bullet tags and go to rigid body. And let's go ahead and zoom out and we'll talk about some things that we might have to troubleshoot here. So if we hit play now, you'll see it's actually working really well, but this is sliding a little bit. It's going a little left and a little right, but it's really not going that bad, but we don't want it to move at all. You see how that's sliding over? We don't want this to move. So we need to go into our dynamics tag, go into the collision, we'll turn bounce off. Obviously we'll turn friction up to 100. One thing we want to do is just hit T and scale this down just a little bit. It looks like it was clipping into our top belt there. And so all we're trying to do is get it to fit in here, but not be clipping through our belt. We just want to have this fit in here and not be clipping through our belt. And what happens by default if we hit play on this is it starts to move because it's being pulled by the bottom belt and not being pulled by the top belt. So what we need to do is just create this. We don't need to worry about pulling it back with the top belt and having it work on both surfaces or anything like that. We just need it to not move. So all we need to do is go in here and go to follow position and turn that up to about 99. And when we hit play, it's going to sit right there. And we just want to pull that down just a bit. So all we need to do is go into this tab. You can see how there's a tiny little gap here. So let's just pull this down until that is touching right there. And so now with our settings set how they are, with our force set at 99 and everything, when we hit play, this should just start rotating and not move. There you go. You have a perfectly working conveyor belt. So now we've got that working and it's staying in place. We can just literally grab this tube, hold control and drag it over here to the corner, and then hold control and drag it over here to this corner. And now we have a nice looking conveyor belt where everything's rotating and we're pulling our object along. So really, really cool. So with everything selected, we'll just right click and say make group objects, Alt G. And that's going to put everything in a null for us, and we can call this our belt. So now all we can need to do is, just rearrange some stuff. We can hold control, pull it up, rotate it around, and we'll just move it back. So it's back and above. So it's going to pull that off. I think it's rotating in the right direction. Yeah, pull that off this way. And then we'll take this one and grab our belt, click and drag, and then rotate it the other way. So it's pulling away from the camera. And we're just going to slide that in so it's just tucked in to our belt there without clipping through. So we have this nice little scene. If we start off at frame 0 and we put our cube up here, we'll start on this conveyor belt. We'll hit play. It should come down and then bonk and then flip off because it's going too far. We'll grab this belt, just pull it back a little bit. It's pushing our cube out too far. Hit play. Boop. Nice. Hopefully that's not fragile because it would be broken. Bonk. There you go. So now we have that kind of working in a good way. We've got it set up. What we can do is we want to be able to just scrub through our timeline and have everything work and not break like that. So what we want to do is just click our dynamics tag, go to cache, make sure include collision data is selected because otherwise it won't actually help us out that much. And this is going to basically bake everything so that it doesn't have to rerun the sim every time. So you get exactly the same results every single time. We'll click bake all. Done. And we'll go ahead and hit play. And you can see now we don't have to hit play. We can just scrub through the timeline and that's working perfectly. So exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and just take a look at how to set up the viewport and create that pile of boxes real quick. So let's go to this camera. So to get that isometric view, you want to go to camera, and then you just go down to isometric and you realize it's zoomed in and you're like, oh, it's facing the wrong way because it's always X and Z this way. And my scene was not set up that way. How do I rotate this around? Well, you can't. It's isometric, so it's always from this angle. But fear not, because you can just hit Control A, select everything, and then just rotate everything around. I believe 180 degrees. And bring it in till everything's in your scene a little bit there. Yep. So a couple things we notice is after rotating it, our cube isn't working correctly. So we need to clear all the cache. Also, this little guy down here was going crazy. I think he's clipped in a little bit there. So let's just pull him back. And now we'll just reset our cube over here. And we'll go right out of frame. So now we have our isometric view. If we take a look at this, we just have our top conveyor belt just slightly above this one, so it can drop that off, and it's a little behind it. And there's a little gap here because it kind of has a little momentum. So it flings it a little bit, and then that's going to carry it down. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll hit play. Cube comes in, drops down. Ooh, I kind of love that it doesn't quite fall off. I got lucky there. If you're having issues with that, what you can do, I also love that it does that. What you can do is you can play around with the bounce. You can lower that down. You could up your friction a little bit. You can hit Control D and come in here and try to increase the steps or lower the steps to get your result, but probably increasing them is going to give you a more accurate result. But you can lower the error threshold and stuff like this. But luckily, by default, I got a good seed here. So it's going to be different almost every time you run it. Sometimes that's just kind of how dynamics works. So you want it to be as consistent as possible. And once you get something you want, you're going to want to go into your dynamics tag here, and we're going to go to cache, and we're going to say include collision data, and we're going to bake it all. And what that's going to do is that's going to memorize that for us. So now we don't even have to run the sim. We can just scrub through our timeline, and we can have this really nice cube fall off. So our issue is that we don't actually have a long enough in our timeline to actually go off screen. So how do we fix this? Well, we'll need to unbake our dynamics for one, because we're going to change things, but we don't really want our conveyor belts to go any faster. We just want them to keep going past our point. Now, if we just grabbed our conveyor belt, go into our settings here, our cloner settings. And if we just grab this and pulled it, that's going to slow everything down. So it takes 360 frames rather than 320 frames to get there. And that doesn't really fix our problem. So what we want to do is we want to go into each of these belts, control click each of these cloners, go to window, go to the F curve, and we're going to go ahead and hit H. And with everything selected, we can go to functions and then track after, and then continue after. You can see that drew a little black line right here. So that's saying, okay, well, I know you're going to go from here to here. So I'm going to keep that exact same velocity infinitely into the future. So now as we scrub through here, you'll see even past 320, it keeps going. So what this means is now we can hit play. We can see how long we need to get our cube off screen. There we go. Comes down. We'll see if 360 is enough. Going down. Oh, suspense. Is it gonna be enough? Ooh, just shy. So let's go ahead and just turn this up to 380. And we won't have to worry about anything. Everything's just going to keep continuing. We don't have to move keyframes around or anything like that. So that's how you can create this really nice continuation of things to make adjustments. And now it goes off frame at like 375. So this is perfect. It's exactly what we want. Now we can go back into our dynamics tag and bake it all. So now we have our looping cube exactly how we want. So when we get to the end, it's off screen. So now I can come back on screen, no problem. So now lastly, let's create a pile of cubes real quick. And so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna create a cube. And we'll do that fillet on there. And we don't need any segments or anything like that for this. We're just gonna pull this up a little bit and we are going to just control, click and drag and make a bunch of these real quick. Several of these. And then we're going to select all of these and then use what's called the dynamic place tool. And we're going to click this and you'll see our little icon changes. And if we drag the viewpoints here, you see it adds dynamics to all of our stuff, and we can hold shift and it will continue. So if you pick it up and rotate it, it's just going to work. And then if we hit then if we grab the move tool here and we hold shift and let go, it's just going to add dynamics to it and keep playing it out as long as we're holding shift. So we can just keep kind of rotating things and then hold shift. And let's just keep going until we get a good result that we want. Bam. I like that. Let's move this guy. And you can move them individually as well. And then let's just make another copy of this guy. Go back to our move tool, make a few more over here. And we'll just dynamically place them real quick back here and rotate them a bit, pull them up and then let go and hold shift. There we go. Nice pile of boxes. So then we can just, grab all these, put that red on them with all of them selected. And then also on our cube here, we'll grab that red, put that on there. And then all of our belts, we'll go back to our move tool. All of our belts will apply this blue to the shiny blue and all of our tube pieces inside. Tube, 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 and one more tube. Yep. And we'll apply that light blue to those. And there we go. So now we have, if we hit render on this, we've just got an infinite light and an area light on our scene. Oops, I didn't do all of my belts. So we'll go back to our cloners, put our blue on our other cloners as well. You may notice, if you get out of our view here, that all of our cubes are actually floating above the ground. And that's because for whatever reason, I had my ground plane beneath my scene. So we're just gonna grab that ground and bring it up, or we can grab all of these cubes and bring them down, and they won't move dynamically. We can just go ahead and bring them down normally. There we go. So now they're not floating. Go ahead and turn our infinite light up a little bit. Now I had my lights set up, but I want to show you how to set up some lights. So let's go ahead and we have our scene here. It's dark. We want to add an infinite light. Click and hold this light down here and go to infinite light. Now the way the infinite light works is it's kind of hard to tell what's going on because there's no real good indicator or anything like that inside of Redshift for an annoying reason. I don't know why. But basically, it's always going to be shooting out from the Z. So wherever this Z blue line is shooting, that's where the light's going to be coming. So if we make that shoot straight down, you realize we're going to light our scene directly from overhead. So let's pull it this way and then this way a bit. So we're kind of matching our isometric view, and it's not lighting it up very much. So let's go ahead and grab this and turn this up to about 2.5, not 25. Let's do 5. Turn it up to 5, and then we're going to go to the details of this because we have these really sharp lines and these shadows, and this looks a little cartoony, and we don't want it to look that cartoony. So we're going to go ahead into our softness and turn that up to 2, and that's just going to soften those shadows up just a little bit, and we're going to bring our transparency up a little bit as well, just so our shadows aren't quite as harsh. Okay, and then this is looking really flat because that's what infinite lights kind of do. But we're going to add an area light here that's just going to give us some highlights on our scene, and then we're going to put it back here, casting this way, kind of the opposite direction of our light. So let's go ahead and click the area light button. Let's go ahead and create a null, and we'll put it right here in the middle of our scene, and we'll right click our area light animation target, and grab that null and put it in there. So now this area light is going to face everywhere inside of this. Our area light is always going to face the middle of our scene. So let's just pull it back here behind our scene and pull it up. So now it's going to cast a backlight. And we're going to stretch this out so it's pretty big. And that's a lot going on. So that's obviously far too bright because obviously the scale of an area light affects the brightness of the light unless you turn on normalized intensity. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to turn down the intensity a little bit to about 4, maybe 6. Yeah, we want some highlights on there. But yeah, that's looking pretty good. We've got this nice sort of simple lighting setup with just 2 lights. We've got some highlights hitting our fillets and stuff on our shapes and across our conveyor belt here. And we have some nice hard shadows from our infinite light. We can always come into our infinite light and tweak it just a little bit if you want. Try to get just a slightly different result, but it is a little tricky to control. So let's just make our shadows a little longer. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's try to pull them back a bit. Yep, so that looks good. So now we can come in here and turn off this and open up our Redshift view so we can actually see what this is going to look like. Hit progressive, hit bucket. Always like to turn on photographic exposure and set my starting point to 180. And then we can brighten it up by just lowering our f-stop a little bit to about 6 or so. Should be good. And turn our colors on, turn our contrast up just a little bit, and then scroll down here and just crank our saturation up to about 1.2. That's just making our colors pop a little bit more. If you want, you could use some bloom or something, but I don't think this scene really needs it. Yeah, there we go. So now you have a nice looping animation. That was a lot. I didn't really intend to do an entire scene breakdown, but I just love teaching. So if you like these kind of big entire scene breakdowns, let me know. They probably take a little longer to create sometimes, but I really enjoy them. And there's definitely going to be more content coming out soon that's like this, because I really think the best way to learn is by building something fun. And hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, think about hitting the subscribe button and the notifications. And just thank you guys so much for all the support and stuff over the last, years of growing my channel. And it's just, so whether it's your first time viewing one of my videos or if you've been here since the beginning or something like that, just thank you so much for showing up. And hopefully you enjoyed this and learned something. If you did, think about hitting the subscribe button and turn on those notifications and liking the video. It just means a lot for me. And be sure to visit derekkirk.net. And also, if you would love to just come chat with other artists and stuff like yourself, go ahead and feel free to join the free Discord channel where we just kind of hang out and talk and troubleshoot. And you actually get to vote on what kind of tutorials and stuff you want to do, make suggestions, and we get to pick what kind of stuff content's going to come out. So it's a really cool way to interact with you guys and get to know all of you. So be sure to click that link below and join that. All right. See you next time.